Welcome to Cedar Fort Publishing and Media Behind the Scenes. I'm your host, Valerie Lovelace, and I'm so happy to be with you today as we speak with Shelly Locke and Anne Marie Oborn. Shelly Locke is a 2007 Young Mother of the Year, international speaker and author of Celebrating Motherhood with the Prophets and Celebrating Fatherhood with the Prophets, among many other things. And we have Anne Marie Oborn, who is a wonderful artist and illustrator. And we will talk about the many amazing things she has done shortly. I am so honored to speak with both of you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Honored to be here.
So, Shelly, you do a lot of things to encourage and support and lift motherhood. Let's talk about some of those things.
Thank you. I'm an international speaker on motherhood. We mostly focus on the importance of mother-child attachment to policymakers who may not understand quite how important mothers are to their nations.
Mm-hmm. And so tell me a bit more about that. Well, like, where have you spoken before? How does that work?
When I was Young Mother of the Year, and on that Mother's Day in 2007, I spoke in the former Warsaw, Poland communist headquarters. That was a Mother's Day to remember. And I have spoken in the Kremlin, and I've spoken in the House of Representatives in Nigeria to the Conservative Caucus. Lots of conferences in America and throughout Europe.
Wow. Are we having problems with our lawmakers understanding the importance of parenthood, basically?
I think everywhere, and we're starting to see some really good things on the landscape. Government's finally giving mother leave and father leave, and in Hungary they have instituted stipends to help families get underway to get larger vehicles or larger places to live, so there's actually room for children so they can be parents, and it's being very successful.
Wow. Okay. And so I guess the purpose of that is that giving these parents more opportunities to parent their children so that their children are brought up properly, right?
Well, and just have space to have children, especially
right.
in Eastern Europe. Housing is a serious issue. What they need to recognize, and a lot of them are coming on to this recognition, is that the children are the future of their nation, and so many nations are getting into what's called demographic winter, where they're not being able to replace their own populations. And so governments are using incentives to help families just be able to be families that want to be.
Wow. So let's talk about some of the other things you do. One thing you wanted me to look into, which I did and I found was absolutely wonderful, was your Instagram. The power, it's the_power_of_mothers is how you find it on Instagram. And you have really powerful messages on there.
Thank you. It's been a joy. My daughter did all the graphic design, and about the last 30 in a row on there that are recently posted are original. The rest of them are collections of people's work. But who is out there honoring mothers and honoring motherhood and saying you matter and you make a difference and you're special and important, and what you do no one else can do? And the power of mothers on Instagram is definitely doing that.
Right. And I agree with you. I think really outside of the church, I hear a lot of it, at general conference and talks and that sort of thing. I hear it there, but outside of the church, we're not hearing this powerful message about how important mothers are we?
No. And when you realize that the mother is the bringer of the nations, and she is the seedbed of the human population and the shaper of the future, and that the people that she turns out of her home are the quality of society. It's really quite enormous in its scope about how important and valuable mothers are to the world.
Okay, now let's talk about your books. So first you did the Celebrating Motherhood with the Prophets, and now your current book that just barely came out is Celebrating Fatherhood with the Prophets. And these are beautiful books with beautiful artwork done by Anne Marie. And tell me about, what was your inspiration? How did these come about?
I have been collecting motherhood and fatherhood quotes for a long time because of the speaking and needing to have good information and also just valuing pieces. And so one day I was getting ready for another talk and looking through my resources and realizing that while there's been a few little quote books that have put some words by the prophets, no one has put a lot all together by all the sitting prophets. The prophets from this dispensation. And so I just began looking for resources on that subject, and actually some of them were quite hard to find motherhood quotes on, but if you look long enough,
Yeah.
my grandma says that which you are seeking is also seeking you, and it all found me. so there's 3 quotes by each of the prophets, from Joseph Smith down to President Monson, and I have to say these books, the quality Cedar Fort has produced is magnificent, and also give out some tremendous appreciation for Shonda and the artwork that she did in the graphic design department. Seeing this beautiful book come to life in so much grandeur, it was really a joy.
I'm sure Shonda will love to hear that. And I agree. They're beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful. And not just the artwork, but the way that they're put together. They're very beautiful books. Let's talk about Mother of the Year. So I had no idea that there was this, is it like an award or until I talked to another author of ours a couple days ago, and she was also Mother of the Year. And that was the first time I had ever heard of it. So how did this happen? How did this come about for you?
Someone has to nominate you and put you forth, and then you go through a judging panel and talk about what motherhood means to you and why it's important, and how you would bring something to that role. And in 2007, I was selected.
Do you know who nominated you?
I don't, but one of the things I know that because this particular arena is quite the best and brightest, I have to say, of women. It's just marvelous women. So one of the judges told me that what set me apart, though, at that point, and I was the young Mother of the Year, so there's 2. There's the mother and the young mother.
Right.
And was that because of my child development background, one of the things in my interview I said was, when the other young mothers come to me after a speech or, an interaction, I can actually help them with things about their young children. I was at that time teaching a workshop in lots of conferences called Peaceful Parenting Practices, which I still do. So when mothers had questions, I had immediate useful answers, and apparently that was because how do you choose from this marvelous group of women? So, but anyway, that apparently was a help.
Well, I'm glad I've got your number because I'm still raising some young children.
Call away.
Give you a call once in a while.
Wonderful.
And what's the name of the organization that does this award?
American Mothers.
American Mothers, okay. And then you do a lot of public speaking and international speaking as well. We touched on that a little bit already, but what else have you done?
I have spoken in the UN, and I have produced an international documentary that's in 5 languages besides English, called The Power of Mothers and Their Influence Upon the World. And it has politicians and demographers and social scientists and economists, etc., and church leadership talking about the value and importance of the role of mothers in their nations, in their economy, in their education. It is a collection of international authorities in their own fields projecting that value into motherhood and saying from those different perspectives how motherhood is so valuable. And in the opportunity, we had a chance to film it in 6 countries, and so leaders of the world were in these 6 countries at the time over a few years, and we pulled them all together in rooms and interviewed them about what they think is important. And it is a marvelous piece, I have to say. I just watched it unfold and the things they had to say to bring to the table that about motherhood being so important.
And where can our listeners find that documentary?
At Candlelight Distributors.
And so how did you 2 come together to do these books? Let's start with how you know each other.
Okay. One of the marvelous opportunities in one of my years at the UN, clear back in 2011, was meeting Anne Marie, even though we didn't live very far from each other in the same state. We had never met. We had met in the New York UN. So we had an evening together, and when it came time to pull together illustrations for this book, we were thinking in terms of classic art because it seemed to fit so beautifully with especially with some of the prophets' quotes being clear from the 1800s and et cetera. But we weren't having much success. There was not a whole lot out there of classic art that fit this particular work. And so while my daughter and I were looking online for art, I cleared now in 2019 remembered Anne Marie. And I said, I can't even imagine if I have a card. And my daughter said, remember that binder you kept of all the cards you ever, wherever you speak? So I ran to my binder and flipped and flipped and flipped all my UN years. And there was Anne Marie in the middle of 2011, but it was a house phone. I said, what are the chances? And she answered the phone.
Yay.
And remembered me. And the rest is marvelous history.
Thank goodness you didn't move and change your phone number. On that note, let's switch over to Anne Marie. Anne Marie, on your website, can you give our listeners your website?
AnneOborn.com.
And there's another person on that website with you who does art as well. Is that your husband?
Yes, my husband is also an artist.
Wow, you guys are a really talented family. Is that how you ended up finding each other?
Actually, we met in band.
Oh, okay.
We
Music
both
and art go hand in hand.
I think so. And we didn't think of each other as artists. I think I had a 9th grade art class, and he never took art. But when we were both recently married, had one child, and we were in Indianapolis, Indiana, we both started painting. And I was painting, and he said, could you paint this for me? And I said, oh, that looks too hard. And he goes, it doesn't either. And I said, you do it then. And he did. And so that's how he started painting.
Oh, my goodness. I love that story. And you both have very different styles. You have kind of like this dreamy, soft focus style, and he's a little bit more masculine in the way he paints. You're both excellent artists. So, and you've studied art abroad extensively. Where are all the places that you've been?
Well, mainly I was interested in going to Russia because my teacher, the main influence in my art, was Russian. And he escaped from Russia and came to the United States, eventually getting here, and had what he called the Rose Estate up near Rexburg. And so he has influenced so many people. And I heard about him through a street artist who was a pastelist. And I saw his work, and I said, you know something about color, and I want to find out about it. So he directed me to Sergei Bongart, and that created an interest I've got to go to Russia someday. So I've been there 3 times, but twice I was able to stay a full month, and I was able to study through teachers that had learned from Repin and all those wonderful painters in Russia. And then I came back with a project called the Atlantis Project, where myself and Suzette Gertsch were the 2 Americans, and we traveled in the Golden Ring, which is a number of cities around Moscow anciently, and there were many structures there. And they wanted to rejuvenate the interest in those structures. And I was also interviewed by the KGB TV, so that's my claim to greatness over in Russia.
Wow. And so you painted these structures so that they could bring more awareness to them?
Yes, I think they're trying to rebuild them. They have found that the religious community has gone by the wayside because of communism, and they're trying to reinstill an interest in their churches and restoring them.
Wow, that is an amazing thing to be a part of.
And I hope, and wouldn't the family be restored too?
I have to
somewhat
comment about Russia and the family. I had the privilege of serving on the first Large Families of Russia committee, and then we put on an enormous family celebration at the Kremlin, and they are all about valuing family. They've completely shifted because they saw what they lost and value what they lost and want to have, and it's really phenomenal what's happening in not only Russia but Eastern Europe in the blossoming of the acknowledgement of the family. That's
wonderful to hear. I'm really happy to hear that. Let's see. And where else can my listeners find your work?
Well, most recently, there is a show at Anthony's Antiques, and it's called Certain Women. And 90 artists were invited to participate in this show, and that will open this Thursday. And then on Friday, the next day, the ACA, which is the Alliance of Covenant Artists, are having a seminar and a show there. And one of the pieces in the books will be in that show. And it happens to be a portrait of my family. And it's about 4 by 5 feet. And it will be showing there Friday morning. And then at Christmas time, there will be a show in the Joseph Smith building. And there will be about 30 other artists. And I participated in that show for, I think, 11 years. I don't know for sure. But I'm one of the founders of the Inspirational Art Association. So that show will happen as well. But other than that, just in homes, and the Southam Gallery carries a little bit of my work there, Linda Southam.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay, and so one thing I'm dying to know is how did you guys work out the pictures in this book? Did you paint all original pieces for these books, or did you already have some? Did you do both?
Well, when Shelly called me, she said, "We don't have very much time. We have to put this together." And I said, "Well, then all we can do is take from the images that I already have." And so we did that, and it was a miracle.
It was a miracle.
That is amazing, because they all fit together so perfectly.
And that she had an entire gallery to fill this book. So as we were beginning this process, after I called her, my daughter was still on the computer, and she had all the quotes pulled up, and Anne Marie just started sending pictures, and with what was on her website and what she sent to us, we put it all on one page on the computer and just began to match, and tears were just going down my cheeks, saying, "Oh my goodness, look at this." And my daughter would say, "Look, this goes with this." And in a very short amount of time, with all the prophets pictures and the quotes, her pictures were matched together as though she had been painting for decades for this book. It was really, really uncanny, and so grateful. And it was nothing short of a miracle to find it on our deadline, and the rest is literary history, I guess you would
And
say.
Anne Marie, do you feel like you were preparing for this book without knowing about it all this time?
All I can say is it was just so rewarding to, and especially associate my artwork with quotes from the prophets. I can't tell you how humbling that is. And all artists and authors and probably musicians feel like they're just never good enough, and the images aren't good enough to present to the Lord. But I think in a way we were praising the Lord and what we could do. And just because you're not Pavarotti doesn't mean you shouldn't sing, right? Exactly. So I'm very happy and humbled to associate my artwork with what you put together with the quotes. Thank you.
You're very welcome, and thank you. I can tell you that when I have these books at a conference and the women have a chance to come and just stop by and browse, they'll read a quote and they'll see her picture and they just begin to weep, because part of the motherhood book, I will say especially, I'm sure the fatherhood book follows up on this too, but probably a little more powerfully or acknowledgeable in the mother book is a great deal of the doctrine of motherhood. And so when you hear those piercing truths and they touch your heart and you see this exquisite art that Anne Marie has produced and the majesty of it, it just drives it to people's hearts, and they just begin to weep, and they'll say, "I need 5 more, thank you."
To give away, right? They want to share with everybody.
Exactly.
Wow.
One of the first quotes by Joseph in the mother book tells the doctrine that mothers will have their children as they have laid them down, if they had to lay them down in this life, that he says we, because he had to lay down so many of his children, we will get our children back as they were laid down. And the comfort that is for mothers who have lost children is phenomenal, coming from the voice of a prophet, but not only that, someone who's experienced that very heart-wrenching situation, and then giving so much life-giving hope with his affirmation that mothers will receive their children, mothers who are faithful and keep their covenants, he says, will receive their children in return. And so the book has tremendous amount of hope. There is a beautiful painting by Sister Oborn of a mother in a garden with a daughter with her walker, and the quote talks about mothers being responsible for their physical and their spiritual development, and what a precious acknowledgement of those mothers who are raising these beautiful, unique children. And there's a painting of a military family that talks about how in military life how important mothers are. It's just a work, but we had the quotes. We had 3 quotes we could match to each picture, and out of that, one of the 3 went with one of her pictures, and the match is just unbelievable.
Wow, that's amazing. Shelly, I noticed both of your books stop with quotes from President Monson. Why is that?
Thank you. You know, this was such a great learning process. And one of the things that we learned was that, according to the church's style guide, it isn't recommended to publish words of the sitting prophets. So we were very welcome to work up to President Monson, and then that's why the book ends there.
Oh, awesome. And hopefully you won't get a chance to do that too soon with our current president, because I love him.
Yes.
And let's talk about this award-winning picture that you guys have in the Fatherhood book.
I was looking there again to match the quotes to the prophets and the pictures, and we had enough art. Anne Marie had painted yet another gallery of fatherhood art, and you asked her earlier, she felt like she'd been painting for this book all these years. I don't know if she does, but we felt like it was definitely a match made in heaven. And so, but we were looking for one of Joseph Smith in the Fatherhood book, because all of his quotes that we could find are only about his own father. And what a marvelous example his quotes set right at the go-get from in this book. And so I asked her about the possibility of a painting of the 2 of them, and I'll let her tell you that story.
When Shelly said she needed this painting of a father, I said, well, how about I do your husband with one of his children? And we didn't talk about it for a while, and we had all the other images. And then she called me and she goes, the one we really need, and I need you to paint, is one of the prophet and his father, because the quotes have to do with that. And so I thought, oh, that's a little intimidating, because I searched and searched for an image of Joseph Smith's father. And I think there's a profile and not very much information to see how he looked.
Mm-hmm.
So I studied what his brothers looked like and relatives looked like and what the hairstyles were like. And just recently my daughter married a man, and he has a son. And I kept looking at them, and I think he's just got an angelic face. His name is Will, and his father's name is Brian Roberts. And I said, they would be perfect. All I have to do is add the sideburns on the side, and that will make a wonderful portrait of Joseph Smith Sr. and Jr. So I was so just pleased that you motivated me to do that painting.
Thank you.
And it did get an award. It's an ACA award, which is Alliance of Covenant Artists. And I think they have a first place and then about 3 merit awards, of which this one was a recipient. And the pleasure I had is receiving this award from Don Fazy and Herman Dutoy, which are 2 past curators at BYU. So it was a good night for me.
Yes, I'd say so.
Well, and this image is such a tender moment, and you can imagine that this very moment probably took place lots of times in their lives, where Joseph Sr. is teaching something to Joseph Jr. and how much his father was revered by Joseph Jr. It just comes out in this beautiful moment that she's captured.
And I don't know how, but before I even saw the quote name next to it, I immediately knew who it was just from looking at the picture. So wonderful job.
That makes me happy.
Yeah, I really did. It's beautiful.
My research did well then.
Yes, You did well. Well, and I don't know what Joseph's father looks like either, so, but maybe my spirit does. I don't know. But thank you, ladies, so much for coming out all this way and visiting with me today. It's been such an honor to speak with both of you. I think you're both amazing women, and I'm very, I was so nervous to meet you both because you both have such amazing things under your belt. So thank you so much for coming out today.
Oh,
Thank you, Valerie.
It's been such a privilege and so much fun to share this time with you. You are a great interviewer.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you guys had a great time. God bless you, mothers. When all the victories and defeats of men's efforts are tallied, when the dust of life's battles begins to settle, when all for which we labor so hard in this world of conquest fades before our eyes, you will be there. You will be there as the strength for a new generation, the ever-improving onward movement of the race. Prophet Gordon B. Hinckley. You go into a family where a man treats his wife and children kindly, and you will find that they will treat him in the same way. We should be kind to one another, do good to one another, and labor to promote the welfare, the interest, and the happiness of each other, especially those of our own households. Prophet Wilford Woodruff. There is no higher authority in matters relating to the family organization, and especially when that organization is presided over by one holding the higher priesthood than that of the Father. The authority is time-honored, and among the people of God in all dispensations, it has been highly respected and often emphasized by the teachings of the prophets who were inspired of God. Every father should rise to the dignity of his holy office as head of his family. Prophet Joseph F. Smith. Let us commit ourselves to the principle and the practice of gathering our families around us in our own homes. Let each one of us ask himself, have I done my duty in my home, in reading and in teaching the gospel, as it has been revealed through the prophets of the Lord? Have I kept my children close to me and made home a pleasant place and a place of reverence, love, understanding, and devotion? Our children are the most precious gifts that our Father bestows upon us. If we can guide their feet in the pathway of salvation, there will be joy eternal for us and for them. Prophet George Albert Smith. Take men anywhere, at sea, sinking with their ship, dying in battle, lying down in death under almost any circumstances, and the last thing they think of, the last word they say is mother. Such is the influence of woman. Prophet Wilford Woodruff.